afraid of Americans. I'm afraid of the world. I'm afraid I can't help it.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Basement Gun Shop. So what's on the agenda for today? AR-15s, one of my loves. I love ARs. What can I say about them? It's been the U.S. military's main battle rifle since the introduction of the M16A1s. It has been plagued with problems in its original inception as the M16A1. It's been cursed and praised by military and civilians alike. You have a group that hates it. You have a group that loves it. I am a member of the latter. I love the AR-15 platform. So today, what I want to talk about is the difference between a direct impingement or a gas-operated AR-15 and a piston-driven AR-15. Now, the one sitting here in the vice block on the bench, already partially stripped down, is a Stag Model 8T. The reason this is sitting here is because it still has the old style handguards on it. You know, the plastic ones that come off the Delta ring in two pieces. This one sitting directly here on the bench, standing up by itself, is a Stag Model 2 with a few improvements. There's been, like one improvement made to this one, which was an oversized magazine release with a laser engraved American flag. I'm sure I don't need to explain the significance of the laser engraved American flag. So let's get down to it. Let's talk about gas operated AR-15s first. Yes, I'm smoking again. If you don't like it, too bad. This is a Stag Model 2. It has a Magpul bad lever installed on it, a little hollow sight with a 3 MOA dot, no biggie. I removed the rear sight simply because it didn't work with this sight, so that's not an issue. I also installed a free float forend on it and a Jerry Michalek compensator muzzle brake. I really like these, and for the price you can't beat them. So what's the difference, or exactly how does a gas-operated AR-15 work? Well, let's open it up. Pull the bolt carrier group, and we'll talk. When you fire a round, the bullet goes down the barrel. Right here, can't see it off camera, but right here in the rear sight, there is a channel milled or drilled through this up into here. That connects with the gas tube, and I think you can see it right here. This gas tube takes hot combustion gases and ports it back into this part of the bolt carrier group. The pressure throws the bolt rearward and unlocks the bolt. And on the bolt in here are 3 little stainless steel rings. They're called gas rings. They're the biggest point of wear on this specific part in the gun because they're exposed to hot gases, carbon, fouling, all that good stuff. Or actually, I should say all that nasty stuff coming back through the gas tube. So after that, the pressure builds, it unlocks the bolt, throws the bolt rearward into the buffer, compressing the buffer spring, moving the weight of the buffer backwards into the stock right here, back like this, and then it comes forward again, picks up another round off the magazine, chambers it, locks, and the whole cycle starts all over again. A couple years ago, and I honestly don't know exactly when, somebody decided to take the bolt system or not the bolt system, excuse me, take the piston system or the piston idea from the AK-47 and combine it with the AR. At least that's the explanation I've gotten. And then what you ended up with was a slightly more expensive, but a slightly more reliable AR-15 variant. And I say variant only because it differs from the norm. Okay? It's still an AR-15. What I have here already partially stripped down on the bench block is a Stag Model 8T AR-15. It's a piston-driven AR. So this is all part of the gas piston here. And you can see that if I unscrew this. There we go. Give this a shove. That slides right out. There's a pretty heavy-duty spring in there that will return this forward. But when this gun's fired, the bullet zips down the barrel. The hot combustion gases get bled off and slam this stainless steel rod backwards. That rod and there goes the spring. And here's the spring from the gas piston tube. Just so you know, I do all this unscripted. I just say, here's an idea, I set up the camera, and I run with it. That's why stuff like that happens. I'm not worried about it. So here's a bolt carrier group from a piston-driven AR. You can see the difference in the keys. This is the surface where this rod contacts the bolt carrier group and drives it backwards. Actually, I should be doing it like this. Drives it backwards when the gun is fired. The bolt in this, because there's no hot gases coming into the bolt carrier group and behind the gas rings on the bolt, this has to be under spring tension for it to reset into its unlocked position to come forward, scoop up another round off the magazine, chamber it, mate with the grooves in the M4 barrel or in the barrel, and then lock up. So those are the primary differences, the mechanical differences between a piston-driven AR and a direct impingement AR. And direct impingement, again, is nothing more than a fancy-ass term for gas-operated. It was gas-operated for 50 years. All of a sudden, it's got to be direct impingement. Go figure. I don't know. But, that being said, what are the advantages? If you YouTube search the H&K 416 torture test, the H&K 416 is a submachine gun. It's fully automatic. They run like 5 30-round magazines through it non-stop. Just hold the trigger, it runs empty as fast as they can. They change the magazine, slap it in, run it dry, and they do that 5 times. They immediately break the gun open, take the bolt carrier group, and drop it in someone's bare hand. And the bolt is barely warm to the touch. Why? Sorry about that edit, guys. The battery's in the camera ended. So, as I was saying, H&K 416 bolts barely warm to the touch. And that's because no hot gases are going back into the receiver or into the bolt carrier group. Simple enough. Care and feeding or care and maintenance of a piston-driven AR becomes extremely simple. As a matter of fact, the last AR I built last year was a piston-driven AR. So I'm going to get my assistant, who's sitting on the steps watching, to go to the gun safe and grab the AR right in front and bring that over. Daniel, would you do me a favor and bring that? It's right in the gun safe. Would you bring that over to me, please? So while he's doing that, I'm going to put this back in the gun. Yep, that's it, bud. Thank you. That's my number one man, my shooting buddy. I built this on a Stag Model 2 lower. Kind of built it for a reason. I'm calling this the Spirit of Freedom AR. The lower has the text of the Second Amendment engraved on it. We have a Gadsden flag and an American flag engraved on the ejection port cover. American flags on the pivot pin, takedown pin, magazine release, and on the trigger guard. This side's all done in gold. And this is the first piston-driven AR I ever built. Price-wise, you're looking at about $300 difference between the two. Functionally speaking, okay, as far as the person who's operating it, there is no difference. The magazines come out the same way, they go in the same way, the gun's charged the same way, it shoots the same way, all that good stuff. So I'm just going to set this out of the way for right now. So functionally speaking, there's no difference. Financially speaking, there is a difference. The gas piston conversion kit, it's an Adams Arms gas piston conversion. I highly recommend them. I did a lot of research on all the gas piston conversions I could find when I was building that. Adams Arms is the only one who not only has a gas piston conversion, but it also has a setting. I love this. It actually has a setting on the gas piston if you're going to put a suppressor on your AR. So that's the route I went. I paid the extra bucks. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, on the Brownell's website it was like $339. The gas piston conversion. It came with the bolt carrier. The bolt carrier, not the bolt. Came with the bolt carrier, the front gas block, the piston spring, and the bushing to install in the upper receiver. But we'll talk about that some other time. So, like I was saying, the 416, they ran 5 magazines, 150 rounds on full auto through the gun, and the bolt carrier and the bolt were barely warm to the touch. Any heat that's accumulated or transmitted to the bolt carrier group on a piston-driven AR is going to actually come from the base of the brass in the chamber, contacting the bolt face, and the heat of actually the powder burning in the brass is going to be transmitted through the bolt in the bolt carrier. From my own experience, I have noticed that the recoil is for lack of a better term, I'm going to say it's gentler. You know, forgive me searching for words, searching for terms, but I told you at the beginning of this, when I do these videos, they're unscripted. I just have an idea and run with it. So, which one's better? Again, I own both. I own a number. There's an AR-10 in the gun safe. It's a Smith & Wesson M&P-10 that is gas operated. It's just a function of how well do you want to take care of your gun. don't think I've ever heard anyone else saying this, but I love cleaning my guns. I tear them apart religiously and clean them just because I haven't had my hands on them for a while. And, you know, that's just me. I'm not saying you need to be that way. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying this is me, this is the way I am, and this is the way I care for my tools. You know, so whichever way you want to go with it, you got to understand you're going to pay more for a piston-driven AR because it requires more work, more parts, and more intricacy in installing this gas block and this, and then a foregrip that is relieved to fit a piston system, because you can't just take, for example, you can't take this foregrip and put it on a piston-driven AR. This area of the foregrip isn't relieved, or it's too thick to house the piston. Part of the metal is going to get in the way. So usually you'll find that the foregrips for piston-driven ARs, you can give me just a second, let me grab this one. Are going to be a little heavier. There's a bit of a difference in height, or the width, whichever way you want to look at it, between this one and this one. Not much. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there is a little bit of a difference. And that difference is the fact that this one is relieved for a gas piston and not for a gas tube. The gas tube is considerably smaller, which hopefully that'll focus. You can see that small tube in there. Because I can't take this fore end off without taking off the gas block, and I don't want to go through all that on camera or again. Set that down. Whereas you can see with that the difference between that small gas tube and this larger tube that houses the piston and allows this to move freely through that tube. Cleanup on a gas piston, it's basically the same as any other AR. You are going to get some carbon on the face of the bolt, but other than that, it's nothing more than, at least with the Stag, screw this out, wipe it off, maybe spray this out right in here, no oil, wipe off the head of the piston. I like to put a little oil on the spring because it's a moving metal part and it's going to contact the metal part. And then from there, unscripted. Edit because the camera shut off because the memory card was full. So took it upstairs, dumped the video, bought a new camera with a much larger memory card. And because it was kind of late, I decided to wrap it up for the night. So came down, pulled everything back out. When the camera died, I was just screwing this back in. I put the foregrips back on. I told you, about cleaning up a piston-driven AR, that basically all you have to do is wipe things off, spray them out, and then clean the barrel as normal, clean out the lower receiver as you normally would with any firearm. A gas-operated AR does require a little more love and care, simply because empty, simply because you're getting those hot combustion gases back into the bolt carrier group and into the receiver. So you do tend to get more fouling in the lower receiver. You get more dirt into the bolt carrier group. So actually disassembling the bolt carrier group is kind of a necessity. Disassembling these is not a major task. There's a small cotter pin right here that retains the firing pin in its slot. Simple punch. Pull that cotter pin out. Firing pin drops out. Push the bolt back in. Turn the cam pin 90 degrees. The cam pin will drop out, and then the bolt comes out. You can take a nylon brush to the interior of the bolt carrier group. I prefer nylon brushes on certain surfaces simply because this is where metal on metal slides and you achieve the gas seal with the gas rings, and I'll bring the bolt up closer to the camera so you can see in a minute. So I scrub these out with a nylon brush, not a phosphor bronze brush or any metal brush. The bolt of a gas piston AR, I'm in the light, hopefully you can see that. These right here that actually look like they're solid, these are the gas rings that are the biggest wear point in a gas operated or direct impingement AR. This back side of the bolt right here is where you're going to get the majority of your carbon scoring and carbon deposits that just get basically they get baked onto the back end of the bolt. Of course, you're going to clean out your bolt face. You're going to scrub out the locking lugs. Again, I use, for the majority of it, I use a nylon toothbrush. Like that, big fat bristles on one end, little bristles on the other. For the carbon scoring, I might use something like a brass toothbrush. If need be, I'll hit this with some of the break-free foaming bore cleaner and just let it sit to kind of loosen that carbon, then scrub it off, get it all nice and clean, oil it back up, and just a little bit of oil, 1 or 2 drops, and take those 1 or 2 drops, work it all over the bolt, and that pretty much does it for cleaning. Spray this out good with some form of solvent to wipe away any oil or residue from hops number 9 or whatever powder solvent you're using to clean your gun. When you put the bolt back together, make sure the extractor goes on the right hand. If the bolt carrier group is facing away from you, make sure the extractor goes on the right hand side of the bolt. I managed to put one together backwards once and looked really stupid when I got to the range. You get the bolt in, line up the holes through the bolt for the cam pin, drop the cam pin back in, turn it 90 degrees, come on, turn it 90 degrees, drop your firing pin back in, push that all the way in, and then your firing pin retaining pin goes back into the groove and it'll slide right back into the bolt carrier group. Little oil on these faces right here where they contact the receiver. A little oil on the bottom where it contacts the hammer. Metal on metal. It's always good to have metal on metal with some oil, or oil when you have metal on metal contact. And that is pretty much cleaning an AR. Well, as far as bulk carrier group, you're still going to spray out the lower receiver, spray out the upper receiver, run your bore brushes through the barrel. Every 1,000 rounds that I put through a gas rifle, I have some very long pipe cleaners. I got them at a craft shop. I'll soak one in hops and I'll run that down through the gas tube from the receiver just to get some hops in there and scrub some of that gunk out, and then I'll spray it out back down into the barrel with, hold the barrel down and spray into the gas tube with whatever I'm using, Birchwood Casey gun scrubber. Break Free makes Power Blast or something like that. I like gun scrubber. Don't really like the residue it leaves behind, but I still like gun scrubber. And that's pretty much AR-15s, what you have out there, what's available to you. All the parts on this bench are available for purchase as parts from a number of retail sites, a number of manufacturers. I'm not preaching one over another. I'm just saying this is what I used. My research led me to believe, for example, I mentioned the Adams Arms gas piston kit in the piston-driven AR that I built. I just liked the specs on the Adams Arms, that coupled with the fact that it was a flat top front gas block. It had a setting for a suppressor or just regular. That gun runs gentler than anything I've ever shot before. Damn near as gentle as a SCAR 5.56. I actually thought it was better, and I challenged somebody who had a SCAR and I lost. I had to admit the SCAR was gentler than that one. But hey, it's a $3,200 rifle versus one I built. Truthfully, I don't remember how much I paid total for all the parts, but I'm up around the 26, 27, 2,800 mark. Might even be as high as 3,000. But it was first piston-driven AR I wanted to build, so I went a little farther with it. So that's pretty much it for this installment of the Basement Gun Shop. As always, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. You have comments, leave them in the comments. If it's something you want to see, you have ideas for a future episode, by all means, let me know. Until then, thanks for watching the Basement Gun Shop. Have a good day and keep shooting.